Hey guys, this is AdGuard Home, and in this video I want to show you how to install AdGuard Home on CasaOS. But first, a quick message from today's video sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Linode, the largest independent cloud computing provider. If you don't want to, or can't for whatever reason, self-host applications the way we talk about on this channel, Linode provides virtual servers that make it easy and affordable for you to host anything in the cloud. You can set up any of the applications that they have available in their marketplace with just a few clicks, or you can set up your own Docker VPS and install basically whatever you'd like in a Docker container. They have load balancers and firewalls available to help keep your apps online and safe. If you run into any trouble getting set up, Linode comes with amazing 24/7 customer support by phone or ticket, along with hundreds of guides and tutorials to help you get started. Sign up today at linode.com/dbtech and get a $100 60-day credit on your new Linode account. Links are in the description. So in our previous CasaOS video, I showed how to use the CasaOS App Store to install Pi-hole, and one of the comments that I received on that video was, can you show us how to install AdGuard Home on CasaOS instead? And I actually really appreciated that comment because the reality is I use AdGuard Home on my network for DNS level ad blocking anyway. I actually prefer AdGuard Home to Pi-hole, if only for the aesthetic, but there are a few other little things that I do like about AdGuard Home instead. So let's take a quick look at AdGuard Home so we can kind of see how it works and the different things you can do with it. And then after that, we'll take a quick look at how to get it installed on CasaOS on a Raspberry Pi 4. So this is the actual AdGuard, one of the actual AdGuard instances that I use on my home network. And here we can see that this is like the last, I think, 30 days of queries on this particular instance. Now I do have two instances of AdGuard Home running as a primary and a secondary, just in case one of them goes down. The other one will keep working. And then I've also got an AdGuard sync that will, if I change the settings on this instance, will automatically copy all of those settings over to my backup instance as well. So definitely check out those videos if you haven't already. But again, this is just a primary instance, and here we can see how many DNS queries there have been, how many DNS queries have been blocked, which is a little over a third. It will also tell us how many blocked malware phishing sites that it has stopped us from getting in trouble with, as well as if you had a parental censor, a parental block on there, you could also see how many adult websites were blocked as well. Below that, we've got some general stats for the last 30 days, including, again, DNS queries, how many were blocked. So basically all of this data just kind of written out in a text format here. Over on the right-hand side here, we've got top clients, basically which of our clients are getting the most or requesting the most amount of DNS requests. We've kind of got those all broken down. And if we see anything that's wrong or whatever, we can block it straight from here. And then we can actually scroll down and see basically everything that's going on here. Below that, we've got top query domains. Of course, Google. We use Google for everything, so of course that's going to be a top query domain here. We've got Unify. We've got actually another Unify. This is the Ubiquity Networks sync thing, because I use sync thing to back up my phone. And then Lockly, I've actually got a smart lock on my front door, and of course it has to stay online. So that's what we're seeing there. And then of course we've got top blocked domains. We've got 2 Roku TVs, and holy crap, do they want a lot of data, a lot of requests sent. We've also got, of course, Netflix, Adobe, Google Analytics, and of course we can scroll through any of these and see more. Well, not that one, but the other 3 we can scroll through and see what additional information there is for any of these different things. So if we come back up to the top, we can the very first thing we see is next to the logo is whether or not our instance is on or active, running, whatever. I can click disable protection, and then you can see that will turn itself off. We can click on refresh stats so that we can get updated information here. Now that is one thing that I kind of do like about Pi-hole better, is that those stats refresh in real time, or they did last time I looked at it. Whereas these, if you want updated stats, you have to refresh the page or click refresh statistics here in order to get updated information. So nothing, it doesn't actually do it in real time. That's kind of a bummer, but because of that, it is probably using fewer resources to not have to run a JavaScript in the background to keep this information updated. So there's some trade-off there. So if we come up to the top, of course, we're on the dashboard, so that's what that is. If we go on over here to settings, we've got several settings under here, like general, where you can block domains using filters and hosts. Of course, that's what we want to do here. That's why we're using this. You can use the AdGuard browsing security web service. Of course, I encourage that. If you want to use the parental or the save search, you can turn those on. Enable logging, that's good, so you can kind of keep track of what's being queried and by which device, those sorts of things. So with the anonymized client IP, it's kind of if you just wanted to collect data, but you didn't really care where it was coming from, you could do that, and then it would not, it would basically, like it says, it would anonymize the IP, so you wouldn't necessarily know which device it was coming from. I can see some maybe commercial reasons for that, but I think in a home environment, you wouldn't want to do that. Below that, we can determine how long we want to maintain our query log retention. We can enable statistics and how long do we want to keep those. We can also clear the statistics and query logs with the buttons associated there next to the save buttons as well. If we come back up here to settings, we go to DNS settings, and we can determine who we want our upstream DNS to be. So I like to use Cloudflare. If you follow this channel for any time at all, you'll know that I love using Cloudflare. I've been using it for years, so I trust them with my DNS. So I've got them as my upstream cloud or my upstream DNS provider. You can change the settings down here. And of course, there are examples down here for how you might want to put this in. So below that, we've got some Bootstrap DNS servers for resolving addresses of DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS. So if you want that set up, you can use the Bootstrap DNS servers that are in here, or you can put your own in there as well. You can set up a private reverse DNS server if you want to do that by putting in your IP address right there. And of course, I'm not actually using private reverse DNS servers or resolvers, so I'm just going to uncheck that. And then enable reverse resolving of clients' IPs. If you wanted to do that, probably set that as well. I'm going to go ahead and click Save there. The DNS server configuration, you can adjust these by the rate limit. Do you want to enable eDNS client subnet, DNSSEC? Do you want to disable resolving of IPv6 addresses, blocking mode? There's a bunch of different settings that you can go through for these, however you want to set up your network. And we've got DNS cache configuration for sizes and minimum time to live and maximum time to live and optimistic caching. Access settings, you can override your allowed and disallowed clients in here, and disallowed domains, you can save those as well. Of course, click Save after each of those little sections to make sure that all your settings are saved appropriately. You don't want to go through and set everything and then click one save button and lose everything else. So just kind of save as you go with those. Encryption settings, I don't have HTTP or DNS over TLS or HTTPS set up on this. But if you wanted to do that, you would need to set up ports 443 and 853 by default in your actual setup that we'll get to here later. I didn't set that up in my settings, so I'm not using that. You can also upload your own certificates and keys for those certificates here. Let's see what else we've got. Client settings. You can configure individual devices via this. So that's kind of a cool thing. If you wanted one specific client to have very specific settings, you can actually do all of that right here under Add Client. And then you've got clients, the data on the clients using AdGuard, but not stored in the configuration. So nothing that involves my stuff there, at least on my settings. And then DHCP, if you wanted to set up a DHCP server, you could do that using this. I'm not going to. We're not even going to cover it in this video. Most of us are using routers, and that works just fine. Filters, we've got DNS block lists. I've got a bunch of them in here. Well, I say a bunch. I've got like 30 of them in here, and you can turn these on and off as you'd like. You can check for updates. Hopefully this doesn't lock up the system like it did last night on me. We'll give this just a second and see what happens. But these regularly get updated. In fact, it looks like they were updated just yesterday. In fact, just now, you can see that all of these were just updated. And you can add additional block lists. You can choose from the list of defaults here. I'm actually going to go ahead and enable that one, and the anti-malware list and the easy list. Let's just go ahead and save all of that. Cool. So now we've got those lists added as well, and they've all been updated recently. Or you can actually add a custom list. So if you have the URL of a list that you'd like to use, you can just put that in there and enter a name up here and then enter the URL, click save, and then it will download it and implement that blocking list into your setup here. You can actually edit these lists as well. If you wanted to change a URL or something, you can do that, or you can just delete it by clicking the little delete icon right there. And of course, in the middle here, we can see how many URLs are on each of these different lists. So over here, we've got DNS allow lists. So if you had a specific set of things that you wanted to allow, maybe you've got something that was on one of those lists that you want to override and allow, you can do that in here by creating a list and entering it here by clicking on allow list, going through that same process. DNS rewrites, you can do that if you'd like. We can add a DNS rewrite. And you can kind of follow the directions here. Basically, you could use this as maybe in the past you've used like a hosts file in Windows to set up like a domain name for an IP address on your network. You can do the same thing here by entering a domain name and then entering the IP address associated with that to have a local domain set up via AdGuard. So that's just another way to go ahead and do that. Blocked services. Now, this is one of the things that I really, really like about AdGuard over Pi-hole is that I can just come in here and block any of these different services that I want just by ticking the icon there, or the little radio button or whatever you want to call it there, and clicking save, and then it will just block that service. Now, I did some testing with this and I was able to block Facebook. However, I wasn't able to block YouTube. So this one's kind of finicky sometimes, but I've had more successes than failures using this service block than I expected. So that's good. I'm glad that this is here. I'm glad that I can do these things very, very quickly without having to try to get all of the subdomains and domains and all that kind of stuff for a particular service. This just kind of does all of that in the background on your behalf. And then we've got custom filtering rules. You can put in specific rules here to either allow or disallow certain things. Again, this is kind of another one of those overwrite the existing settings. You can come in here and say, I want to allow these things, or I want to disallow these things, or whatever, using kind of their regex examples down here. I don't know if this is actually regex, but it looks like you can use regex. So you've got some options here on how you can do specific things with specific IP addresses or URLs. And then you can, check if a host name is being filtered. You can enter that host name there and click check, and should be good to go there as well. If we come up here to query guide, basically this is all of the query logs that the system has on file. This is all just from the last couple of hours this morning. We can see, which service was requested, which IP address requested it, how long it took to process it, and of course time and date over here. And if you happen to see anything in here that looks weird or whatever, you can just click block right here next to it. Or you can block only for this client, or disallow this client entirely. So you've got lots of little granular things that you can do when you're going through these logs and setting things up. It's very, very user friendly in the process of blocking or allowing certain things at your leisure. And then up here at the top, we've got a setup guide. Of course, once you've got this set up, in order to use it, you'll have to change your DNS settings either on your router or your individual devices to point the DNS from whatever it is to this IP address, or of course the IP address of your particular AdGuard instance. But that's just what it's talking about right here. So guys, there you go. That's kind of the quick overview of AdGuard Home, how it works, how you can set it up, the different features that it's got, that sort of thing. So the next thing we want to take a look at is actually how to get it set up in CasaOS. So here we are on CasaOS, and if you've been following along, you'll notice that this looks different than it did in our previous video. I had a power outage the other day that actually corrupted my install, so I had to do a reinstall this morning, and now we're back at square one, which is fine, not a big deal, but it's just one of those things that happened, and I didn't have an actual proper backup solution involved here, so I'll have to go back and reset some things up if I decide to do that. But luckily, this instance is just for doing demo videos like I'm doing right now, and doesn't really matter as far as that's concerned on my end. But just make sure that you always got a good backup solution in place for your home servers. So we're here on our dashboard, and we have a couple of different ways we can go about adding this new application. We can click on App Store, and it'll bring us here, and then we can click on Custom Install and fill in the blanks there. Or we can click on the little plus here and click on custom install. It's the same thing, just two different ways to get there. So we're just going to fill in these blanks. So the first thing we want to do is for our Docker image, we're going to put in AdGuard/AdGuard Home, and then we're going to put on the latest tag there. I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to put in, man, if I could use my mouse there, we're going to give it an app name like so. And then our web UI. Now, this is kind of one of those things where we have to kind of think ahead on how we're going to do this. We're going to use several different ports for our AdGuard Home setup and instance and whatever, but we need to figure out where we're going to put the dashboard port. Now, for me, I always put this on 85, or we are in this case. I've also got it set up on this AdGuard Home. You can see we're on port 85 right there. So I'm just going to use port 85 here as well. The other thing I want to do here is add some ports. I'm actually going to need a few different ports. In fact, let's take a quick look at AdGuard here, just so we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. This is the official AdGuard Home hub.docker.com page. And if we scroll down, we can kind of see what's going on here with all these different ports. However, if you read a little bit further down, we can see that port 53 is just for DNS. We're definitely going to use port 53. We've also got port 67 and 68 on UDP, and then 68 on TCP as well. You only need to add that if you're going to use AdGuard Home as a DHCP server. I don't plan on doing that. Again, I've got a unified network set up and ready to go, so I don't need this to handle DHCP for me, so I'm not going to enter ports 67 or 68 into my setup. Below that, we've got some additional ports here, ports 80, 443, and 3000. We're actually only going to use two of those. We're going to use 80 and 3000. The 443 is if you're going to do DNS over HTTPS. Again, we're not going to do that in this particular instance, but if you wanted to do that, you would want to make sure that you've got port 443 available on the device so that you can add that in there as well. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here is that this port 80, that's actually going to be your dashboard port. So this is what I actually set as port 85 in the web UI right up here. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and put that in for 85 and 80, like so. And then while we're at it, let's also add port 53 in here. And I don't remember, we need that to be, so it needs to be TCP and UDP. And that's perfectly fine. What we're going to do is just switch this like that. And then I don't know if 80 needs, nope, 80 just needs to be TCP. We can see that right here. So that's set up just fine. And again, we're not going to use, we also need port 3000. 3000 is going to be the port that is used to go through this setup process. I'm not entirely sure why they put it on a different port, but they did. So that's what we're going to have to work with. So we're also going to put port 3000 in here. And I'm pretty sure that one just needs to be TCP as well. And then port 853, if you're going to run AdGuard Home as DNS over TLS. Again, we're not going to do that for this particular setup. This is just a basic DNS ad blocking setup here that we're going to do here. And then below that, we've got ports 784, 853, and 8853. If you're going to run AdGuard Home as a DNS over quick server, and here it says you may only leave one or two of these. So I'm not actually entirely sure what that is. So let's just take a look at what DNS over quick is. Oh man, that's a whole thing, isn't it? This document describes the use of quick to provide transport privacy for DNS. So we're not going to worry about that for the time being. So I think for right now, we're just going to use ports 85 or 80, 3000, and ports 53. I think that will probably get us set up just fine. Yeah, that should be good there. Volumes, we're going to need 2 volumes. We're going to need one for, if we actually take a look over here, we need one for a work directory and one for a configuration directory. So if you followed again with my previous CasaOS videos, you'll know that I like to put things in home, Docker, AdGuard, or home and Docker in this case, and then AdGuard and work directory. And then I'm going to change this to conf directory, just so we've got 2 separate working directories in there for this setup. And then I'm going to do this for the work directory, and then one more for the configuration directory, like so. And then basically at this point, we're good to go. We don't have any environmental variables to put in here. There's nothing in here that we need to worry about. Devices, we don't need to worry about that. CPU shares, memory limit, restart policy, adjust those to your needs. I would actually set this to the restart policy being always because if this goes down and your DNS is set to point to this, you won't have any internet. So I would actually have this set to always, just as a little failsafe there. And then for the app description, we're going to say AdGuard Home. You don't have to put anything there, but I did, so there you go. Once we've got all of this filled out, we're just going to go ahead and click on install. So we'll go ahead and let this do its thing. And then while it's doing its thing, or once it's done doing its thing, we'll jump over to port 3000 so that we can take a look at getting the setup complete and then hopefully be able to get logged in to our dashboard. So what I'm going to do is click right here. And it failed. So what we're going to do actually is switch this to port 3000 like so. And here we are. Now we're on the AdGuard setup page. We're going to listen on all ports for our web admin interface. We're going to change this to 85, like so. And then our DNS listener will be on all interfaces on port 53. That's fine. Click next. We're going to set up a username and password, and then click next. And then again, this is saying, hey, in order for this to work, you need to switch your DNS to point specifically to this IP address here. So of course, you don't want to use either of those addresses. You'll want to actually use your CasaOS IP address for this. Go ahead and click on next, and then click on open dashboard. And there's a real good chance that this is going to fail. And now the way we can fix that, if we come back over to here and then go to settings, switch bridged to host, click save, and refresh. And now we can log in, and we'll put in our username and password like so. Now we're logged in. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And what I want to do next, let's actually just go ahead and set up some filters. We're going to do block list. We're going to turn that on. We're going to add a block list. We're going to choose from the list. And then we can just go through here and obviously choose whichever of these that we want. And of course, some of these are regional. Maybe you don't need all of that. Maybe you do, but we're going to go ahead and click on save there. And then you can see down here in the bottom right-hand corner that it's going through and adding all of that. We'll switch this to like 50 rows. And then we've got all of this stuff in here, and we can see the last time it was updated, those sorts of things. So, of course, now the next thing we want to do is edit our DNS. So here is my DNS settings for Windows 11 anyway. I know that there's an old school way of doing this. I'm trying to get used to the new way of doing things, and it's killing me. So what I want to do is come over here to where it says DNS management. And I'm going to click edit. I'm going to set that to manual. I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to do 192.168.1.130, right? That's correct. So we'll click save, and then we'll move this out of the way, and then we'll come back to the dashboard. And now we've got a DNS query there. So let's do kind of what we did in, oops, not that, you dummy. Kind of what we did in the last video. So we're going to go to YouTube, like so. We'll let this page load. And then we'll refresh our stats, and here we can see that that worked in real time. Now, again, this is kind of one of those things where I really did prefer that little thing on Pi-hole where this updates in real time. So let's actually come over to DB Tech Reviews blog, if I could type, and then we can let this load, and we'll refresh. So now we've got 23 DNS queries with 3 being blocked. So let's go ahead and open this. So they've actually got some ads over here, and then we'll refresh again. And here we can see that now we've got 31 DNS queries, and 9 of them have been blocked. So hopefully, kind of going through this setup process will give you a better understanding of how to set up AdGuard Home on CasaOS. Of course, as I've mentioned in previous CasaOS videos, I will have an export of this available over on Patreon if you want to just download the export file and then import it into your CasaOS setup. You can absolutely do that. Of course, you will have to be a patron in order to have access to those files, but if you want to do that, definitely head over there. I will have a link in the description down below where you can become a patron and have access to these files. Also, in addition to getting access to these project files, you'll also get early access to my content, which usually comes out at least a day ahead of when it goes live on the YouTube channel for the general public. And of course, becoming a patron actually just helps me kind of keep things running in the background and that sort of thing too, so that I can be in a position where I can keep making content like this on a more regular basis. That said, I do also want to give a big shout out to my patrons. There's some of you who have been a patron for a week, and there's some of you who have been a patron for a year, and there's a bunch of you in between. And thank you all. I really do appreciate your continued support. It really does mean the world to me that you want to help me continue to make this content. So thank you very, very much for that. That said, though, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But if you've got any questions, comments, anything like that, go ahead and leave those in the comment section down below. But be sure to check out the description for any of the resources you may need in order to follow along with this video. But that said, again, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So as always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.